is going sequential. Give me a piece of paper. It's all full. No problem. No, it's okay.
Morning, everyone. Good morning, EDCTPers. You are awake, hooray. Okay, so this morning I hope to bring you a very exciting and dynamic conversation, all about something that I know EDCTP puts a very big emphasis on, and that's developing the next research leaders in Africa. And this morning we're very lucky to have some giants of African leadership on the stage with us, if I may. And they will be hoping to share some of their wisdom with the next generation. So that's what we're hoping to bring you this morning. My name's Zoe Mullen. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Lancet Global Health. And if you want to hear a bit more about that, please come to the Meet the Editors session later this evening at 6:15. I'll be there with some of my editorial colleagues, and you can ask us any questions about publishing and anything else. So without further ado, I will let these panelists introduce themselves. So over to you, Margaret, for your introduction.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. You've just heard my name, Margaret Japong, from Ghana, the University of Health and Allied Sciences. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Rose Ghana Fomban-Lake, Emeritus Professor, University of Yaoundé 1, retired from the university, but not tired.
Nelson Sewankambo from Makerere University. I'm a professor emeritus, just to phrase the message differently. I retired, but the university thought I was still very useful, and so they appointed me emeritus. I was a dean of School of Medicine for some years, and also the principal of College of Health Sciences at Makerere University.
Good morning, everybody. Marcel Tanner. My roots are actually in the Swiss Tropical and Public Health Institute, but after retirement, as you see, you have always these old points. But I think, to be precise, it's not a question of retired but not tired only. Retired means, because English is not my first language, that you have just new tires, retired. That's why we roll on. And for us, it's a pleasure to share some of our experience on the way that we mainly did together. After Swiss Tropical and Public Health Institute, I had the privilege to work for EDCTP as High Representative and for the Swiss Academies of Arts and Sciences as President. But that's all unimportant. Important is what we discuss here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks everyone. So that's given you a flavor of the energy behind these conversations this morning, I hope. So Margaret, maybe if I can turn to you first. Considering this sort of rapidly evolving global health landscape, what, in your opinion, are the biggest barriers young African researchers face when trying to start their careers in global health, and what can we do to break some of those down?
Interesting question. You talk about rapidly evolving, and my senior colleagues here are talking very proudly that they are retired. I'm also retired.
Not to be left out.
Yes. But if you read the briefing on this session, you see that there's talk about global leaders examples have been given of those who have received long-term training from EDCTP and other funding organizations. The long-term training makes a lot of difference. The capacity strengthening makes a lot of difference. I have benefited a lot from TDR, and once you get a grant from TDR, you have a re-entry, you have a PhD grant, you are put on committees, and your hands are held along the journey. These days, it's not very easy to find funding institutions that would give you a long-term grant. So you get one for your PhD and that's it. And sometimes people are lost. After PhD, what next? Do I go back home or do I stay in my country? So one of the challenges is about the sustainability of some of the capacity strengthening initiatives that are out there right now. But let me use my institution as an example where we train health professionals. So we are training professionals in the field. It's the University of Health and Allied Sciences. Now, health professionals traditionally just do their work in the hospitals or in the clinics. They are not thinking academics. But in recent times, you are finding out that it is critical for these health practitioners to have higher training, but the courses are not there. So you find nurses wanting to do masters and PhDs, and there are very few institutions that have this kind of opportunities for them. If you take a course in medical imaging, you don't have the programs, and in our university, we are having to start it from scratch. So if you take those with the professional backgrounds, it's becoming very difficult, but then they still need to teach the younger ones to be able to upscale their level. And it's important that we look at the curriculum that we are working with to ensure that some of these are incorporated in some of the higher educational learning activities. I started my PhD after I had my children. And for a woman, sometimes the age cutoff becomes a challenge. Where you are applying for a grant and it says the cutoff is 35 years. And by the time you have finished your master's and are working and having children and trying to think of going to do a PhD, you are over 35. So immediately you are cut off. And that becomes a challenge. We are trying to advocate. I serve as chair of TDR stack, and we are trying to advocate for at least letting go of that age limit so that women can have the opportunity to be able to pursue their education, irrespective of where they are in their career. Funding, insufficient funding, we cannot overemphasize that point, where there's limited access to research grants. I used to think when I was building my career that it's difficult to get grants, but it's even worse now. And people, sometimes you try and try and try. I have the young ones in the office saying, we've tried, and we are told, oh, you made the mark, but not sufficient enough to be able to get the grant. So they are getting frustrated, and we are asking what can be done about it. That is quite a bit of a challenge. But then these days, I'm beginning to say that our African governments should start putting money on the table so that they can negotiate properly when it comes to some of these activities, because he who pays the piper calls the tune. So if somebody else is funding all these research activities, then they call the tune. These days, the popular term is co-creation. So there's a grant proposal, the funder is writing it with you, the data is being put out there open, and then you see a funder saying, I am the PI, and I have to. The first time I encountered it, I was like, really? You are giving me the money to do the work, and you become the PI. So the papers that were written had the funder as the PI. Yesterday, we were discussing authorship. I mean, how on earth can the African scientist be a lead author if we have that kind of a situation? Our institutions and how we are resourced is a challenge. It has been like that for quite a long time, but we've had funding institutions that have supported institutional capacity building, which makes a lot of difference. So from the times when you complete your training, but you cannot go back to your institution because the resources are not there, has changed, but we could do better so that we can retain the capacity. Yesterday, we were finding people who are Africans, but are in institutions in the north. So when they publish, their names come with the email address of the institutions of the North, so they are not counted as African scientists writing. But when it comes to access to journals and access to articles, when I started my career, you pay to have access. Then we had open access. But now you have to pay the article processing cost. And that is also a big issue, because in my email, I'm getting a lot of messages. You haven't paid the costs, you haven't paid the cost. One of the young boys in my office received a message to say the debt collectors are coming after him because he hasn't paid the article processing cost. Are we allowing everybody to have access? Is it equitable? It's a bit difficult for the young ones, and they get frustrated, but then they also need these publications for their promotion. Without it, what do they do? So then we find a situation where people just go in for any journal to publish, and then that becomes a problem. Maybe let me stop here and then I could go on
You
and
could
on.
go on. Yeah, thanks, Margaret. Thank you. I mean, since I'm here and I'm an editor, maybe I can touch on that point about article processing charges. And let me say that I don't think the Lancet has ever called in debt collectors. That sounds awful. So most journals, and the Lancet journals, will offer waivers, of course. So in fact, one of the reasons the article processing charges are so high in journals like ours is because the waiver, a proportion of waivers is built into that. So essentially, the people that are paying the full cost are subsidizing the people who aren't paying anything. So, and if you're from a low-income country, at the Lancet Global Health, then the waiver is 100%. And then it's on a sort of sliding scale depending on the income of the source country, not the country you happen to be working in at the time. So, but it is a great point, and it's a huge barrier that publishers bear a responsibility for sorting out. But some great other points for discussion there that I think a lot of people will have resonated with. So, Rose, Margaret touched on actually some of the barriers for women, including that age cutoff. What else can be done differently to encourage more young women in Africa to pursue careers and flourish in global health research?
Yeah, thank you. I like when you say differently, but, I would say additionally, to what has been happening. So for too long, really, we focused on individual barriers. But the real challenge, I think, is bigger. Research does confirm that these aspiring female scientists, they face deep-seated societal and community expectations. Let's say there is this powerful traditional narrative about a woman's role, her place. But now we must respond with a more powerful, modern truth. A woman's place should be wherever she chooses to be, whether it be the home, whether it be the lab, whether it be the office. And the challenge is creating a community that truly celebrates and supports that choice that the woman has made. And creating that community is essential. And what do we need here is a change in mindset. That's what we really need. This requires, though, that we stop looking at, universities, research institutes, what can they do, but start building some kind of a movement that engages our entire community, a community that will proactively encourage and uphold literacy, education, to all the levels for the girls as well as for the boys, what is happening with the boys, and then support the early career women, that kind of a movement. And this philosophy is really behind an initiative that I'm deeply passionate about. We have the Higher Women Consortium in Cameroon. Higher Women, there's some here, yeah, in the audience. They say, still we rise. We say higher women, we say still we rise. Higher is really not about being superior. It is a collective affirmation. It comes from the Higher Institute for Growth in Health Research. It's a consortium that we have, and it means We are higher because of the path that we have walked. We are higher because we can lift others up, providing this kind of a network of shoulders that you can rely on at all times. You can cry on that shoulder, you can rejoice on that shoulder or so. That's what higher means. But to do this, what must we do? Adopt a very different approach that builds a supportive ecosystem from the lab bench to the family to the society. So we use the higher framework, which is holistic mentorship, a well-structured networking that transforms women, it transforms young girls, and goes right down to the primary school. We do it right to that level. And this transformation thus becomes, it extends beyond the lab and the home into the communities. It's not a journey then for women alone, no. We must also invest in our young men. This is important, investing in the young men. We need to raise men who are proud supporters of the ambitious women in their lives. When a community raises its sons to respect and champions its daughters, everyone will thrive. Partnership and equality is seen as a strength, and true progress is when the entire community will now rise up together. So bringing this, whether the gender gap is about changing the recipe now and changing it for the entire society. So to me, that's what additionally what we can do. And the Higher Women movement, really supported by the strong male allies, embraced by our communities also, is kind of the recipe that I think we need right now. And it is our commitment that the path for the next generation, what we want to do for it, it should be a little less steep. The door should be a little bit wider, open, and the summit a little closer to reach. And then we can start talking about the glass ceiling. So I think we can all work together then to change the mindset in our communities. Thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful. So some very good ingredients there, Rose. I should invite the rest of the panelists, actually, if they had any further comments on these questions. Do either of the two gentlemen down the end have any further ingredients to suggest maybe for how to empower more women to take up global health research positions? Marcel?
Yes, I mean, what should I add? I mean, I liked very much to listen to Rose, because this is not something that was just theoretically compiled, but lived in the situation. And I think we will get back to this point. I mean, it's really, the issue that she mentioned is actually the question of movement. It's not the question of having programs, training programs, modules that build people, but as it's really to create this movement, then no longer to make it a distinction, here are women, here are the young men, but it's really this movement that goes into this, what our aim in global public health is, that we are really bringing products and solutions and intervention to the populations well tailored. And I think that's what we have neglected a lot at university level and other training level, that it really needs this whole movement from doing science, but also really carrying the products to the people. And that's why the key word for me is this thinking about movement and this how you really can engage together and not engage to have a better impact factor and all this crap, because public health doesn't function with impact factor, it functions with really moving people, and this actually will grow women and leaders in general, as well as all levels of staff. That's how I see it. So it's very simple, but you must tailor it. You cannot have it from some higher level ordered on how to do it. It must grow from the roots, you see. Then you actually move. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, Nelson, turning to you. So we talked a little bit at the beginning about the sort of changing health research ecosystem in Africa. Can you sort of expand a bit on how that has changed over recent decades, and what role universities and research institutions can play in nurturing fit-for-purpose next generation African research leaders and ensuring sustained long-term research leadership development opportunities?
Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think I need to convince any of you here that the ecosystem, research ecosystem in Africa has changed. Why am I saying that? Because you are here because the research ecosystem has changed. If it wasn't changing, you would not have been at this meeting. Now, even though it is changing, my thinking is that the time is ripe, the time is now that we should reimagine the future of the research ecosystem in Africa as far as universities are concerned and research institutes. Why is the time now? Because there is a lot that is happening in the last few years up to today, and therefore, if we do not reimagine what we want to have in the future, and therefore be able to nudge the process so that things happen the way we want them, then they will not happen. Now, let me go back to what has changed in the research ecosystem at our universities and research institutes. I'll take you step by step, walk you step by step from the institutions themselves to beyond. So let's start at the universities and research institutes in Africa. We have increasing number of universities that carry out health research. We also have an increasing number of research institutes in different countries. However, that increase comes with opportunities, yes, but it comes with challenges. And for example, one of the challenges is how do we manage these universities very well and the research institutes so that the research that is done has meaning and impact to our people and in our countries. That the research is ethical, and therefore there are no complaints from any corner. So the increase in number gives us an opportunity to do much more research, to train more people to become researchers, and so forth. The institutions are changing in many places, but some are static. Some are doing business like secondary schools, in that they are not doing any research. All the research they are doing is really inconsequential. Universities and research institutes are setting up research support systems that can support the emerging researchers, but even the established researchers, so that they can be supported in writing a grant application, they can be supported in managing the resources that they get from funders, and so forth. And that is all very good news with the change in the ecosystem. However, the institutes and universities operate in a national environment, and the research ecosystem there is important. That includes our governments, that includes our ministries, and our governments we see a trend that is positive, that they're getting more and more interested in research that informs their policies, informs practice. But what they invest in research is still very little. However, we see that they are investing more as we move on. It's a question of how do we nudge them and how do we have creative ideas from which they can raise resources that then they invest in our institutions and that they value research much more, research and science much more than they have done. So the research environment within a country, there must be policies that are supporting research and science. And we see a lot of those policies now in our different countries. If you move out of the countries, our countries are participating in a collaborative manner. You now see researchers in Uganda collaborating with those in Ghana or Kenya and more. Previously, as you know, we were looking north. Let's look to London. Let's look to Washington for partnerships. But now partnerships are much more on the continent. So the ecosystem on the continent is supporting what is being done in research institutions as well as research institutes. And of course, when we go beyond the continent, the funders, we get a lot of funding, although not enough, from outside. We seem to be more trusted now by funders because some grants come direct to our countries, which was not the case several decades ago. And there's more funding as they trust us. But it must be on the basis that we manage those grants and do accountabilities properly. And hence, our institutions are struggling or are trying, making efforts to do good finance and grants management and get certification for that. The journals are also supportive. Journals located out there, like the Lancet, they put up even requirements that if research is done in low and middle income countries, there should be authors on that publication to show that yes, they are supporting the researchers who are there. I think I've overshot my time. I'll stop here for now.
That's great. Thanks, Nelson. Thank you. Does anyone want to add to Nelson's reflections there? Any more thing to add?
Yeah, Nelson talked about partnership and the fact that we shouldn't just do research for doing sake, which is an important issue because we are doing the research in the countries where the needs are. I remember growing up, I was told by one director of health services that the health services would run whether we produce research results to them or not. And that became a challenge to me. So I had to put in the extra effort to understand the health system so that whatever research I did would meet the needs of the health system. And that's how I got interested in implementation research, trying to make sure that you get the program managers and the policymakers sitting at the table when we are discussing research proposals and discussing what questions we need to address. So partnering with people at the country level, program managers, policymakers, even in the writing of our research proposals, makes a lot of difference.
That's a very helpful point. Thank you. Oh, yes, please, Rose.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention there also that in the universities, some are doing so well carrying out research, and there are some there that really don't know which way to go, what to do, and how to get on like the others. So the university should maybe have a way to bring up those that are down at that level. So many are doing very, very well, but they are responsible also for those that are at the bottom, that they can bring them up. I think the universities have that responsibility also whether it's getting funding for them, helping them to also build up some kind of research in the areas that they're interested in, help them get the funding and so on.
Yeah, thank you. Marcel, we're now living in a globally connected world, and you have had the opportunity to work and collaborate with pretty much all continents, I think. Imagine you could build the perfect training program in Africa. What would it look like? What would it be, its building blocks, and what skills would you foresee as being essential for future leaders in Africa to develop in a decade from now?
Thank you very much. Big question. Thank you. And I'm very happy to build on the answers of my dear colleagues. There is no ideal training program. But what we got here already with the needs we have when we want to train in global health, health in general, health sciences, it has to be tailored to the setting. It cannot be a program that is once written by a few so-called experts and then it is actually dumped into the situation. It must grow. That's what also came out of all the dear colleagues' statements, and it's the word movement. Training is not just a project. Training is not just a module. Training is not just a career ladder. Training is actually must be a movement that we really can pursue. That I would say as a first thing. So no ideal one. The tailoring is very important. And as Nelson said, the tailoring also to the national context that is conducive to really doing science and carrying the products of science to application. So the next point would be that mainly, and you have listened to my words several times before, that we no longer talk about sites that we do some research. We only talk, this is a forbidden word in our community. We don't have sites, we have centers. I think that's the way where an ideal training program goes. It's in investing this movement in really building centers and not just recipients of a project that drives an institution, be it a university or a research center. And I think this leads to a bigger question, that when you want to go to the ideal program, well-tailored, we actually have to think and rethink the culture of science. As an experience in working after my retirement a bit for 10 years in the academies of arts and sciences, with linking a lot with different academies all over the world, if we adhere to this career thinking, which I alluded before, that we are actually just have to hunt for impact factors and age indices and all these things, then we are actually not building programs. I think we should really, not that we don't measure, that's okay, don't say that I said we don't measure that. But I think the broader context is really the whole value chain from innovation over validation, which are, for instance, in our situation, the trials, to application. So as the training program must focus, and we must create the enthusiasm, not a job description, enthusiasm that people are really pursuing and wanting to carry a product to the people as well. And I think it's this spirit that, science has 3 legs in our situations, because a 2-leg chair is not working. We need at least 3 legs. And the first leg is actually the joy to discover. That's science, curiosity like a child. That's 1 leg. The second leg is the joy to share. That means really that you are happy to teach, but also to say, not to say, oh, I don't have it yet, I have to wait, my data are not yet clear, I don't know everything. You always have something to share. That's also an ethical dimension. At any given moment, even if we don't know what we have something that we can share with the community, with our government, and so on. So this is a very important ethical. That's leg 2, the joy to share. And the third joy is the joy to be involved in translation, not just to write the report and recommend 16 things and then say it's on to others to do it. It's the scientists' and science culture's biggest joy to be involved in translational work. And not to make this stupid distinction, no, I'm a basic scientist, and the other ones are just operational studies and so on. No, implementation science is the expression that we have to live in the training program. Because there it contains basic science as well as carrying products to the people that are most in need. And that means then, coming to an end, that we should actually go away, and that's particularly important in this time. In this time, of course we have said many times the times are difficult, but this time it's very difficult, particularly as the pandemic situation has shown, and the relation of to science, be it from governments or from the population, should go away from this sitting on this chair of the 3 legs. Don't forget that. That we actually have just projects. And that is actually something which is a little bit the DNA. We should not talk here at the EDCTP forum on that. Broader, not go into fragmentation of a scientific question into projects. Small project, my project, his project, her project. We should actually really go into these more investments for better health, as you could hear at the opening. And I think the training program must bring in these values, these joys, in order that we can move. And this also shows that the key issue is not just to do a good lab or field work, but it is also a good iterative communication between science and policy and science and society. And I think this is something which includes also the media and science journalists. All over the world, science journalism is really decreasing. You can also do good science journalism by using modern media. But it is actually this thinking that we are a partnership, not only here the scientists and there the rest that has to accept, but it's actually this movement that dear Rose has actually put forward. So this is how I think, if we tailor it to situations, that we could move. And these are maybe things that we will discuss further. Some things have been discussed. And so really getting, you could hear our minister here in Rwanda, how he was emphasizing exactly this value chain from innovation to application. And the investments that are made, and this is also a message to the donors. Donors are sometimes, very often, their cause that they go for projects, Project officers in whatever foundation or donor, they have the tendency, they are happy if they can look after a project and then they see that somebody gets a PhD and something like that. But this is actually fragmentation and doesn't go against what we discuss here with really creating a movement tailored to a situation, investing in people and institutions. Thank you very much.
I really like what you said there about sort of the need to actually have a passion for what you're doing. As part of a training program, the training program itself should actually be engendering that passion. And like you said, Margaret, actually wanting to make a difference and finding the way to make the difference. What are the questions you need to ask? Don't just do research for research's sake. And I think as an editor, I can certainly see that in a paper. The best papers actually come out of someone who has a true passion for wanting to make a difference. So yeah, it's all linked, and I agree, everyone's got a part to play. quick point, Nelson, because we've only got a few minutes left, please.
Just to add 2 points to training. Let's look at training like it is not at one level. Training begins early on for people to get interested in science and research. Now, since we are talking about universities and research institutes, let me restrict myself there. In the universities, you've got undergraduates. They need a dose of training in research. They have master's programs. Again, the same thing. And PhD, you need a program for PhD training. And postdocs, of course. Increasingly, training is happening in our countries. Instead of flying off to high-income countries and train there. But when people train in country, they are more fit for purpose. And they know the environment. And they can do a better job. I'm not suggesting that we don't give them opportunity to go and interface and network with people in high-income countries. That should be catered for, so that they can see what the people out there, how they go about business. Since there are institutes on the one hand and there are universities on the other in the same country, or even if it is across borders, universities and research institutes should collaborate, not only in research, but even in training. Research institutes have resources, have infrastructure, which universities can benefit from. So if we can do that much better, then we will be training people who are fit for purpose in our environments.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you. All right, in the last 4 minutes, we've got 1 minute per panelist to give one piece of advice to researchers starting out. Margaret, over to you.
Thank you very much. Building the next generation of global health leaders. I'm privileged to be sitting on this panel with my PhD supervisor, Marcel Tanner, and Rose Leke, who has not stopped encouraging me in my journey up along. I want to say that mentorship is key, and to the young ones coming up, it is a tough journey, but it is possible. It is a patient walk to success. There are no shortcuts. And just remember that quitters don't win, so don't give up.
Thank you. Rose.
Yes. No, just to go with Margaret about mentorship and a change in mindset. And don't forget about the movement, and I'm sure Marcel got with this movement that we are all going to, move on and see how we can get more women. But not to forget, we start from the primary level, go up to the secondary, and preparing them then for the universities. We can't just do it right there. Up, we have to start right from the bottom to do this preparation, as we're doing in the Higher Women Consortium. Thank you.
Thank you. Nelson.
Let me say to the upcoming people that, yes, celebrate your successes, but also take your failures seriously and learn from those failures. You can learn a lot if you focus on the failures, on why something happened the way it happened, why it didn't come out right. Those are learning moments, and don't throw them away. You will succeed if you look at them carefully.
Thank you. Marcel.
Yes, what should I add? Thank you very much. I would actually also have mentioned as a first point, the mentorship. Mentorship is not a loss of time. Mentorship is not only from, let's say, the director of an institution. Mentorship is at all levels. a key issue. And I think investing in mentoring peers is actually really a sure way that we move. It's a sure way that we also are doing a responsible ethical research when we have this good functioning mentoring system. That is one side. And the second point that advises, don't forget that science and public health science, global health science, and whatever has this chair with the 3 legs: the joy to discover, the joy to share, and the joy to be involved in translation. This, otherwise, if you just live 1 leg, you don't stand in 2 legs, also not. But try to take this along with enthusiasm, with passion, not just, I have to do it because my job description says it. And that's how we move. Thank you very much.
Perfect. All right, and on that very uplifting note, I think we'll leave it there. But don't go away, because we have the Outstanding Female Scientist Prize coming right after this session. So I will leave that in the capable hands of Rose and Margaret to present. But for now, let me say thank you to our panelists. Please join me in giving them a quick round of applause. Thank you.
So good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen, and it's an honor to be asked to jointly present the prize to the Most Outstanding Female Scientist 2025. In 2020, when I was awarded the Most Outstanding Female Scientist, it was during COVID, and so I had to do mine online, and I wasn't happy at all. So today I feel like I'm getting my prize all over again. As you know, the Most Outstanding Female Scientist Prize is awarded to a female scientist who has made a significant scientific contribution and built measurable impact research capacity through training and mentorship for the future generation of research scientists in Africa. Our prize winner is an HIV and sexual health specialist and an epidemiologist. Her work has been highly impactful, focusing attention on adolescents with HIV and influencing change in both policy and programming. Her contributions have been recognized through multiple awards, and she was elected as a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians, as well as a fellow of the UK Academy of Medical Sciences. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present to you the EDCTP Most Outstanding Female Scientist 2025 in the person of Professor Rashida Ferrand of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Before Rashida comes up, we'll watch a video about her work as a testament to the things that I said about her, and you see from the video that it all just depicts the kind of work that she's doing. The video, please.
Science is about pushing boundaries and pushing frontiers. I think there isn't a magic ingredient other than carrying on. Resilience is important. I wasn't planning to be a scientist. I went to Zimbabwe 22 years ago to essentially work in the hospital, and so I had patients who were age 12, 13, 14 coming to the adult wards that had AIDS, were not diagnosed. The understanding at the time was that children born with HIV in the pre-treatment era would be dead by the age of 2. So why was I seeing 12-year-olds with HIV if the vast majority of them had died in early childhood? And really that was the question that drew me to science. I led a series of studies through my doctoral research which showed that at least a third of infants born with HIV would survive to adolescence even without treatment. These children were surviving, but they had lots of illnesses. There was often judgment. So there was a nuance to it, a whole socio-cultural context that accompanied the HIV epidemic that was occurring in children. And I felt that unpicking that could potentially change the trajectory of the way care could be delivered. So we developed a number of age-appropriate strategies to identify and test adolescents with HIV, and also strategies to facilitate linking them to care models that were appropriate to the age group and addressed not just their clinical needs, but also their psychosocial needs. It's important to be thinking about their schooling, their education achievements, their mental health, their sexual relationships. Now, it is a completely changed landscape from 20 years ago. Of course, antiretroviral therapy drugs came along during this period, but they're not the only thing that came along. There is recognition that adolescents have very special needs. We're training a new generation of scientists and teams of people that are going to be working as support workers in communities or clinicians. Giving treatment and keeping children and adolescents alive is not our end game. It's ensuring that they have optimal lifespan and the best quality of life that they can have. And that's what we're working on.
Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Rashida Ferrand.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm deeply cognizant and humbled by this honor. And regardless to say, I stand on the shoulder of giants. Africa has always been an inspiration for me because things have changed, as we've heard across this conference, through right from bottom up, not always top down. And the conference and you all will forgive me, therefore, if I take this opportunity to call upon us all. So whilst we're here today, our job as a body of public health scientists, practitioners, is to prevent and respond to suffering, and to not watch from the sidelines, and to speak up when this occurs. Therefore, I want to call upon you and call upon all of us to remember what is happening in the world today. There are 54,000 civilians currently who have been killed, many of them children, 1.8 million people who are at risk of food insecurity, and starvation being used as a weapon of war, and health systems being destroyed and hospitals being bombed in Gaza. And I think I would like to use this opportunity, and in this country that is so beautiful and has so much resilience and dignity, to say enough, as this country has done. I would like to call on the EDCTP and to all of us as a community to basically do our duty to speak out against the violations that are happening and to bear witness and to stand and speak out against the infringements of human rights. We have a responsibility to work towards an idea of justice that supports a safer and healthier world for all. And as a result, I have had the privilege to stand here and be a tiny part of that with lots and lots of people. And I call upon us all to do the same, not just in this beautiful continent which has so much courage and so much drive, but for us to form partnerships and for us all to speak for those who have no voice at the moment. Thank you to the EDCTP. Thank you to all my colleagues, my academic friends, many of whom are here today and who know that they are who they are, and the people I've had the privilege to work in, the communities who have welcomed me, and to all my many teachers across the world and my mentors. Thank you very much, EDCP, for this prize, and I'm just extremely grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thanks everyone for joining this session this morning. It's been fantastic, great turnout. Thank you for all the support of our presenters. Thank you again to our presenters. Congratulations, Professor Ferrand, and thank you for using your acceptance speech to send that really important message that I'm sure we can all agree with. So thank you everyone. Enjoy the break and see you in the next sessions. Bye-bye.